I think we were fairly confident with going into We Can't Dance. I was actually surprised to see that Phil was still there, actually. I fully expected him to have disappeared. He'd had so much success, I thought, well, doesn't need us guys anymore.
After the Invisible Touch tour, I decided to... That's when I started working on my train set, if I remember rightly. And then I did some film work, so I did Buster. So that took care of a fair amount of time, preparation, filming, shooting, editing, doing that soundtrack or getting involved in that. Then I did But Seriously, which was my record between Invisible Touch and We Can't Dance, and on that whole world tour thing was Serious too. So there was every reason for there to be a delay.
I think at this stage we had this thing whereby we were doing a Genesis record and then solo stuff, and I was doing Mike and Mechanics now, and so you come back with you've learnt things.
Coming to you from Edinburgh, the birthplace of Harry Potter, Sir Sean Connery, Penicillin, The Telephone, Robert Louis Stevenson, and the Bay City Rollers. It's Trimming Musical Fat, and here's your hosts, Stephen and Paul Nicholson.
So welcome to Trimming Musical Fat, the podcast where we trim albums that are too damn long. I'm Stephen Nicholson.
And I'm Paul Nicholson.
And thank you for joining us as we take our invisible scissors to the final Genesis album with Phil Collins, and that is We Can't Dance. So what's going to make the under 50-minute single vinyl TTMF Supercut of the album? Hold on My Heart, Jesus He Knows Me, I Can't Dance, Tell Me Why. Keep listening to find out. And we'll also do regular features like Joke of the Pod, Tale of the Tape, Critical Reception, Trim the Talk, archive interview clips, revisit the year of release, and the final questions.
This is Eric Paul Johnson from Face the Music, an Electric Light Orchestra song-by-song podcast. And you're listening to Trimming the Musical Fat. Oh dear. That wasn't my fat I trimmed.
So Paul, we're talking Genesis today, and I know we kind of covered this on our previous Genesis pod where we looked at The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, but what's your, for everybody listening to this one, what's your level of fandom when it comes to the band?
Yeah, probably like them more now than I ever have. Probably heard all the albums, got all the albums, apart from the last one, but we won't include that.
Mm-hmm. Why not, Paul?
So obvious reasons. I'll just be like the rest of the band. I'll just pretend it never happened. So probably like what you're going to say as well. Yeah, we talked about it before. Probably got into them. You got the Invisible Touch cassette in '87, and then through that, really got into them. And then I bought many years later. I think it was 2004. The Platinum Collection, and it was like, so that got me into a lot of all the early stuff. I think they were remixes as well. So I'd got the We Can't Dance album, which is obviously the album we're going to talk about today. I remember, so up to that point, I'd really only heard Invisible Touch and We Can't Dance. But then, did you buy
the We Can't Dance? Was it the CD or the cassette or the record?
The CD.
Oh, you bought the CD, yeah.
But that was many years. I mean, you're probably talking mid to late 90s. So I didn't buy it at the time.
Okay.
It was after it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to yourself. I think I'm a fan, not a die-hard fan. I don't own everything, but I know most of their stuff now. And the first thing I ever bought was, in fact, the first album I ever bought, I think, was Invisible Touch by Genesis in 1986.
A good one to start off with.
It certainly was, yeah. I remember buying the cassette. Still remember going down there and buying it. It's the Tale of the Tape. So We Can't Dance is the 14th studio album by the English rock band Genesis and was released on the 11th of November 1991 by Virgin Records in the UK and a day later by Atlantic Records in the US. Another 1991 album, that was for me, probably the greatest year for albums. Incredible. And it's their last studio album, recorded with drummer and singer Phil Collins before his departure in 1996 to pursue his solo career full-time. The album marked the return of the band's activity following an almost 4-year hiatus after touring the previous album, 1986 Invisible Touch. So there's 12 tracks on this album. The album is 72 minutes in duration, which means we need to lose at least 22 minutes today. And there were 6 singles released from the album, which I didn't know, I have to say. I thought there was only ever 4 singles, so this was a surprise to me. But yeah, there were 6 singles, and they are No Son of Mine, released in October 91, I Can't Dance, released in December of the same year, Hold On My Heart in April 92, Jesus He Knows Me on the 13th of July 1992, my birthday. Yeah, I turned 18 that day, and good tune to celebrate it. There was another single, Never a Time, released in October 92, and the final song released from the album was Tell Me Why in February of 1993. So, Paul, what was the critical reception to the album at the time?
Rolling Stone chiefly commented on the album's lyrics. They criticised Tell Me Why and Way of the World for being soulless and impersonal social commentaries, but regarded most of the songs as outstanding and summarised, although We Can't Dance doesn't quite achieve the vulnerable grace of Duke or the exuberance of Abacab, Genesis has nevertheless delivered an elegantly spare and even adventurous album. David Brown of Entertainment Weekly gave a lacklustre review stating, "At a time when everything is uncertain, you almost have to admire a record like We Can't Dance. You know there'll be a couple of fleeting moments when the band breaks out of its torpor, for instance, on the very polite primal stomp of I Can't Dance, and that such moments will just as quickly be consumed by the rest of the musical quicksand."
Didn't like it then.
We Can't Dance was a worldwide commercial success for the band, arguably the biggest band in the world at that point. It became the band's 5th consecutive #1 album in the UK, going way back to the early 80s, and reached #4 in the US, where it sold over 4 million copies. Genesis toured in support of We Can't Dance in '92, playing large stadiums and arenas across North America and Europe. The album went 5 times platinum in the UK and 4 times platinum in the US, and worldwide it's their biggest selling album, 13.7 million copies sold.
That does surprise me greatly. I would have thought Invisible Touch would have won that all day long. It only got to #4 in America, which again is surprising.
The singles probably did better in America, actually. I think the singles did.
I was still very fully committed, and to me, I was actually more involved in We Can't Dance than any other record.
This is Caroline. And this is Marisa. We're the Eves, and you're listening to Trimming the Musical Fat.
It's time for us to put on our denims and finish playing pool as we trim the talk, the feature where we're both asked the same questions and have to answer them all in under 3 minutes. So, Paul, are you ready? Let the game begin. So, describe Genesis in 3 words.
Brilliant, underrated, rock.
Okay. Prog rock royalty. Have you seen them live?
No.
I have. Favourite Genesis album?
Invisible Touch.
Me too. Favourite Genesis song?
Domino.
Mine's is Firth of Fifth. Favourite Genesis member?
Got to be Philly Boy.
It's Philly for me as well. What were you doing at the time of the album's release? 11th November 1991.
Only not realising that my hero was going to die 2 weeks later.
The Iron Maiden.
No, Freddie.
Oh, I thought you said your hearing.
No, my hero. But of course I didn't know that at the time.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
What about you?
Well, I was checking back, and I think a few days after the album came out, I was seeing Skid Row at the Edinburgh Playhouse.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I was having my hearing dying, yeah. And when and where did you first hear the album?
I think I'd heard all the singles. I think I first heard the album. I think it was somebody at my work in the mailroom. They had a CD player and they had some CDs that we'd play. And We Can Dance was one of them. So I liked it. I ended up buying it like second hand. So probably mid to late 90s.
Yeah, I think I first heard it with my friend John Pollington's. He's a massive Genesis fan. What was your favourite track on the album?
Since I Lost You.
All right, okay. Yeah, mine's... what's your favourite? Mine's I Can't Dance. What's your least favourite?
Driving the Last Spike.
1 minute
Really?
remaining.
Okay, mine's is Living Forever. And what would you rate this album out of 5?
3.5.
3.5, I would say 2.5.
Game over.
Okay, well done. We've done that within our 3-minute time scale there. So let's just talk a little bit more about the album. So I think you were saying you first heard it at work. Somebody had the CD.
Yeah.
What do you think about the album?
I thought it was really good actually because it was such a hard act to follow. Invisible Touch was such a massive success. And so I was just quite surprised how good it was actually. Because Phil Collins has done some brilliant stuff, but I always preferred Genesis albums to Phil Collins albums, although probably Phil Collins had better singles. But like in terms of albums, I wasn't really interested in Phil Collins' albums, but the Genesis ones I was. And I just thought it was good. It was quite catchy. The only thing I'd say, which is why partly the reason we're doing this today, is it's that early 90s CD era where it's like, let's put everything but the kitchen sink on. And I think there's a couple of songs that last over 10 minutes. And I know Genesis used to do that in the 70s, but I just bear in mind this is around the same time Nirvana released Nevermind, it's just it's dated by the time it's out, basically. But I think hopefully today we can make it a better album actually by trimming it.
Let's hope so. Yeah, no, it definitely suffers from CD bloat. There's no getting away from that. It's too long. But yeah, for me, I've actually never been a big fan of this album, and which is strange considering obviously I'm such a big fan of Invisible Touch. I just remember when this came out just being a little bit disappointed, and I actually never bought it at the time. So I know John had it, I'd heard it a few times, but I never went out and bought it. And I like most of the singles from it, but not much else. And I thought it was a bit middle of the road, a bit overproduced. I thought maybe the band were a bit tired sounding on it, and to me it sounded more like a Phil Collins solo album than a Genesis as a band album. There's a lot of songs that you think, well, this is more Phil Collins type thing. So, but I did go into this and revisit it because, your opinions do change. And after listening to it again a few times, my opinion hasn't really changed. I think too many of the songs are just kind of bland and unmemorable. Although the one thing that has changed, and it's quite ironic, it's your least favourite song, the one that's grown on me is one of the longer ones, Driving the Last Spike. I really quite like that one now. But yeah,
I think for me, it might just be the length of it. And it's a long album anyway, and it's quite early on in, and you're like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's not to say it's a bad song, it's just if I had to choose one, it would be that one probably. Just a lot of it's to do with the length of it, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Marv from Pods Like Us, the show where we help you to find your next podcast addiction. And you're listening to Trimming the Musical Fat.
Welcome back. Our next guest must surely qualify now as rock legends. Genesis are in California promoting their latest album, I Can't Dance, which is now at number 3 in the album charts. And next week, the band are shooting a video for a single from the album, and they're also planning a world tour starting in May. More about that later. In a moment, we'll be joining the lads live by satellite in Los Angeles. I know that you're actually staying up late at night, aren't you? You've got a squeaky clean image. This is rather past your bedtime.
Squeaky clean? How dare you? No, it's only up past 12. We're just about to go out.
Oh, go out to party. So it's not true, all this. You're not sex, drugs and rock and roll, Genesis. That's what they always say about you.
Oh, OK, we're not then.
We Can't Dance. It's the first album for 4 years. Mike, why has there been that sort of delay for you between the last album and this one?
It's not quite as long, actually. I mean, the last time we played together was in July '87. We finished the tour, so for us, the gap was actually 3.5 years. Didn't feel like 3.5 years. Solo albums, Phil done some acting. It's the natural time for us to start the new album. Time flies these days.
You pointed out you've all had highly successful solo careers. What is it that actually makes you get back together? I mean, you particularly, Phil, because you've had the film career as well.
Well, I mean, it's something that we don't do on our own, you know. I mean, Genesis is very much the way we write the songs. I mean, all these songs on the new album came from a blank sheet of paper. We go into the studio with no ideas at all. We deliberately leave the stuff that we've written individually at home, and we come in and we start improvising, mucking about, really. And we record everything and sort of listen back to it and take little bits that sound good, and we expand upon them, and they end up becoming songs. They end up becoming pieces of music that we end up using in different shapes or forms. So there's a very definite reason why Genesis should be here for us. We enjoy doing it. We enjoy the process of writing together, you know.
So, against the odds, which songs are going to make the TTMF Supercut and which are going to float off as ripples in the air tonight? It's time to create the TTMF Supercut of We Can't Dance. For this, for selection, we're including all 12 songs that featured on the original release of the album. So before we talk about the songs, let's talk about the album cover and its artworks. What do you think, Paul?
I think it's quite good. I quite like it because I liked all the single covers were quite good as well, almost animated the artwork.
Do you want to actually describe anything for those that are listening and maybe haven't seen it before? How would you describe the album cover?
So it's pretty much, it's almost like I don't know, I'm just imagining like a father and a son, like a silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a painting. It's almost like they're either on top of a hill or they're on the earth, like a globe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like they're looking up. And I really like the font for the album as well. It's quite cool. It's just very quite childish almost, but I think it's really quite good.
Yeah, and it's kind of pastel colours, isn't it, on the kind of painting or drawing? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just like it, and I quite like it how they always changed it with every album they did.
Well, for me, I think it's a bit like the album, bland. So not the biggest fan of it, unfortunately. But I did like the consistency they had for the singles as well, where it would be a similar design with the pastel
it was good,
drawings and colours and everything. So it was good that consistency across the singles too. Okay, let's go then let's focus in on the songs that we both agreed should be on the Supercut. And you don't know this yet, but we have 5 songs where we agreed. Okay.
12, that's not bad.
That's not bad at all. So let's go through those 5. And the first one is the first song on the album, and that is No Son of Mine for single 2. So let's hear a little bit of it.
He sat me down to talk to me. He looked me straight in the eyes. He said, you know, son of mine. You know, son of mine. You walked out, you left us behind. And you know, son of mine.
I think No Son of Mine is probably one of my most recent favourite tracks, because once again it's almost like the start of what we could be doing, what was the next sort of stage, you know what I mean? It's like once again, a dark atmosphere. That sound Tony has was a little guitar thing I played, which he looped and messed around with and made it sound like an elephant.
Okay, so that was No Son of Mine, Paul. You selected it as did I. What do you like about this track?
I just remember it being the first single, so there was quite a lot of anticipation after, was it 5 years since its last album?
Yeah.
So it was quite an exciting time. That like you were saying at that period. I mean, I think 91 is the year that's been most represented on this podcast.
Oh yeah,
because there's so many good albums at that time. And I remember watching it on the chart show. What I would say now, listening to it now, I think the song's too long. It takes too long to get into it. I think it's 6 minutes, almost 6.5 minutes. I think you could get it down to maybe 4.5, 4 minutes.
I think they've done that on the single edit.
Did they? Right, okay.
Yeah.
So I just think, yeah, it's a bit heavy for the first single, for the first track on the album. It's a bit heavy.
It is.
I think We Can't Dance might have been a good song to start off with. Sorry, I Can't Dance, that might have been a better song. But it's a good song. It just takes a wee while to get into it. But there isn't as much heart into it. I don't know, as maybe on Invisible Touch, I felt there was more heart. It feels a bit colder almost. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but just doesn't grab you the same.
It's yeah. Let me give you a couple of facts. I'm pretty much in agreement with you, but this was the first Genesis single not to go top 10 in the US since 1984's Taking It All Too Hard. So this got to number 12, and we're laughing about it, but that distinctive sound that you hear. You have the clock at the beginning ticking, and there's that. It's like, so the band. I'm sure if memory serves, that was Mike Rutherford's guitar, and Tony Banks had done something with it through his synthesizer and came up with that sound. So that's where that came from. And the band called that sound the Elephant Us. That was what they called it. But yeah, I think I first heard this when the band, which was unusual, they played it on Top of the Pops in 1991. That actually appeared on the show. And it's a really good storytelling song. It's obviously a very serious subject matter, whether it's a wife or it's a son who's been mistreated by the father. And that's what the lyrics deal with there. But yeah, as you say, it's quite a serious, somber rock song, if you like, for the first single, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, good storytelling, and the drums in it are fantastic, as they usually are on Genesis tracks. So yeah, very good song though. And it gets on the Supercut. The second song that gets on, another one we agreed upon, is my favorite song on the album, and it's I Can't Dance.
Sweat, gators getting close, hasn't got me yet. I can dance, I can talk. Only thing about me is the way I walk. I can dance, I can sing. I'm just standing here selling everything.
Tony had this boom, sh, boom, boom, which he played on the keyboard. And I had a guitar riff. And what I do remember actually is that I remember playing it and thinking, well, that's really quite nice. But then I couldn't find it again. I had to go back and find the tape, we recorded it, and listen over and over and over again to work it out. Because it's a simple riff, but it's quite unusual the way it's actually put together.
So that was I Can't Dance, which was the second single from the album, released in December 1991, and it reached number 7 in both the US and over here in the UK. And I think Paul mentioned this already. The song received a Grammy Award nomination in '93 for Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this. So are you, aren't you?
Yeah. Tongue in cheek, because Phil Collins had a really good sense of humour as well, and I think it was good to see the other guys because they always look a bit maybe stiff. So it was a parody of the Levi's advert from the previous year, which used Should I Stay or Should I Go by the Clash. So this was like a sort of spoof version of it, wasn't it? It's Phil Collins playing pool. It just felt it was the opposite of the previous single, because that was quite dark and
that's right.
It was quite long, whereas this was like pretty much straight to the point, commercial, funny. It was probably more like Invisible Touch era Genesis than No Son of Mine was. It's just a really good song, and it just Phil Collins in full mullet mode. This one.
Great guitar riff, isn't it?
Yeah,
From Mike Rutherford, yeah, and just a great song, great video. And actually, I think the band were very clever in turning that kind of stiffness, if you like, of Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford, and making fun of that, if you like, but poking fun at themselves, which I think they did on their videos, which was really really good. So take your hat off to them for that. And yeah, just that guitar riff, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a nice little keyboard from Tony Banks on it as well, which kind of harks back to maybe a little bit. I heard it through the grapevine, Marvin Gaye, that kind of little riff that's going on, which was another Levi's, another Levi's advert.
Right, it reminded me a bit of that song, the But the video as well, it reminds me of like a ZZ Top. I could imagine ZZ Top doing a video like that. So almost like they're doing that in the desert with the car.
Yeah. So I Can't Dance gets on, has a great video, and so does our third choice, which we agree upon, which is Jesus, He Knows Me, and here it is.
I'll get you everything you wanted. I'll get you everything you need. You don't need to believe in hereafter. Just believe me. 'Cause Jesus, He knows me, and He knows I'm right. I've been talking to Jesus all my life. Oh yes, He knows me, and He knows I'm right. And He's been telling me everything is alright.
So that was Jesus Who Knows Me, which was released on my 18th birthday, 13th of July 1992, and that was the fourth single from the album. And I actually didn't know, or if I did know this, I'd forgotten, but Swedish rock band Ghost released a cover version of the song earlier this year. I think Brian might have shared that, and I've totally forgotten.
It was actually quite good.
Yeah, no, Ghost are a really, really good band. But yeah, you big fan of this song as well?
It's good, and the video is a classic as well. So exactly what you're saying there about I Can't Dance, that they're all, obviously it's about hypocritical religious figures and
this kind of
evangelists,
TV evangelism, don't they?
And they're basically showing them don't say as I what was it?
Don't do as I say, do as I do. No.
Don't do as I do, but do as I say, something like that.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do, or something.
Yeah. So it's almost like you see them evangelizing, and then the next one you see them beside a pool with all these women in bikinis and drinking, and like. So I suppose it's just having a laugh at the hypocrisy of it. Maybe how sometimes that happens. But the video is just really fun, and it's good to see Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks as well having a laugh as well, not taking themselves too seriously.
Yeah,
but it's good.
Good tune. I actually thought it was a bigger hit than it was. It only got to number 20 here and 23 in America. Yeah,
I thought it got top 10 in America actually. No.
Yeah, no, I just felt like it was a bigger hit than it was. I like the reggae bit in the middle of the song.
Practicing what I'm preaching. For me making no sacrifice. But I can get you a pocket full of miracles. If you promise to be good, try to be nice.
A really good kind of pop rock song. Yep.
Do you think part of the reason that maybe they never did well in America was because I guess it's the video is about America, part of America, I suppose, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a big criticism of obviously more which is more prevalent in the south of America. The kind of TV evangelism and blind faith, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And money given to people who really are con people.
Bless your heart.
Not all of them. We should add not all of them, but
no, of course.
obviously there are certain individuals who are taking advantage of people's faith, which is just wrong. You know, to go and buy their second private jet, it's just wrong. So, but there's con men, women, and every walk of life, though,
and everything. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's good evangelists as well.
There is. More good than bad. That's the reality.
Hello, listeners. This is David from In the Lap of the Pods Queen podcast, and you are listening to another episode of Trimming the Musical Fat. Slanjava.
Okay, so there's Jesus Who Knows Me. He gets on there, really good tune, and another single gets on. We agreed upon Hold On My Heart.
Hold on my heart, just hold on to that feeling. We both know we've been here before. We both know what can happen. Hold on my heart, hold on my heart, hold on my heart.
Burt Bacharach's one of my early heroes, really, and I love the way he uses chords and was able to have big hits with songs that used a multitude of chords. And I suppose the song "Hold on My Heart," which we call Burt, has an element of that.
Provisionally named after the composer Burt Bacharach, Burt becomes "Hold on My Heart."
Hold on my heart.
So that was Hold On My Heart, which was the third single from the album released in April 92. And that went top 20 both here in the UK and in the US. And do you remember the video for the song?
Yeah, it was quite it was like kind of jazz, like black and white and smoky. And
it was a bit like the video for One More Night, Phil Collins, that late night bar type thing, but it's the band are performing it, but it's like slow motion, and to actually get that effect, the band performed the song with the song playing at a higher speed, so they were miming playing it fast, and then when on the playback they play it back at normal speed, it looks like the band are in slow motion. So it's a simple trick, but it's really effective, isn't it? So a nice ballad, one of your favorites on the album.
Yeah, it's really good. It's one of the ones, because obviously you heard the singles before you heard the album at that point. So no, it's a good song, and I really like the guitar. So I think it's a really good guitar solo. It's really quite jazzy as well. It's just quite groovy. And it's funny, I remember dancing to this at a disco thing, which is quite unusual, but I remember they played it at a family.
Tell me more, Paul.
No, it was at a family thing. It was a charity night. And funnily enough, this was one of the songs. It's just weird to hear that sort of. It was at the time when it came out, so it's just weird hearing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's a good ballad, if not a great one. I mean, I don't think it's as strong as, say, In Too Deep from Invisible Touch or Thrown It All Away. I don't think it's near the levels of them, but it's a good song. I actually liked it more after it became a single. And I think my favourite part of it is the bit where it goes, "I will be there," and it got that guitar.
That's the bit. That's the bit I was talking about. Yeah.
There's a chance, oh, I will be there. Yes, I will be there.
Yeah, that's the best bit on it. So that's really good. Yeah, a sweet little ballad. Nothing more, nothing less.
Like Trimming the Musical Fat, why not check out our other podcast, Trimming the Movie Fat?
So let's take a break from picking the tunes, Paul, and let's maybe get some facts. So can you tell us what the top-selling Genesis solo albums are for each member?
So these are the solo members, and these are what their top selling album was. So at number 5 was Tony Banks, The Fugitive, which was his second album, I believe, and it sold 100,000 copies. That came out in 1983. And the fourth album was Steve Hackett, and it was a band, a supergroup he was in called GTR, and that sold just over 500,000 copies in 1986. The third album was The Living Years by Mike and the Mechanics from 1988, and that sold 850,000 copies. And the second best-selling album by a solo artist was So by Peter Gabriel in 86, and that sold 7 million copies. And the number one selling album by a member of Genesis solo was No Jacket Required from Phil Collins, which sold 23.3 million albums in 1985.
So I think we're saying Phil kind of wins that one, yeah? Thank you for that. So let's return to picking our songs. And the fifth song that we agree upon is Tell Me Why.
Can you see that shaft of sunlight? Can you see it in my eyes? I can feel the fire that's burning, anger and hope so deep within my heart. But before my eyes, oh, for some it's too late. 'Cause it seems there's no one listening, even sleeping in the streets. No roof above, no food to eat. Tell me why.
So Paul, tell me why you picked this song.
So it's quite a nice, very Beatles sounding song. It was, I remember briefly when it was a single, it wasn't like a big hit. It just sounds like the Rickenbacker guitar, maybe a bit like the Byrds, or a bit like the song Phil Collins would do later on that decade. It's in Your Eyes. It sounds a bit like that. But I just like the sound bit. And the only thing is that I think people got a bit annoyed, and that's what one of the review that we talked about said, that the lyrics are a bit simplistic. But then what can you do, if you're famous, if you can't say when you're famous, about things going on in the world? Because it was a bit like Phil Collins getting criticised for Another Day in Paradise, because this song, it's a bit like that, the sentiment about homelessness and stuff like that in the world. And tell me, so it's just like saying, tell me why are all these things happening?
So yeah, it was the final Genesis single to feature Phil Collins on vocals there. And actually you're talking about, obviously it does talk about poverty and so on, but a royalty from the song was donated to the Bosnian Save the Children and Red Cross charities. So there was some good that came out of it. And I have to say, for me, I'd forgotten all about the song, and I was never even knew it was a single. I have no awareness of that at all. And maybe that's because it only got to number 40 here. That might be why. And yeah, just I think everything you said's probably what I was thinking as well. Just notable for that Rickenbacker guitar, and Phil Collins having a similar solo tune with It's in Your Eyes, But yes, a charming little tune, good tune, uncomplicated, good melody. I like it.
Hey everyone out there in the podcasting world, this is Widescreen Podcast. This is Sam Wiles. You are listening to another episode of the Trimming the Musical Fat podcast.
So Paul, before we move forward, this album was released in 1991, why don't you give us 3 important news stories from that particular year?
During that year, it was the resignation of Mikhail Gorbachev. It marked one of the final acts in dissolution of the Soviet Union. And during this time, of course, the Gulf War was in full swing. Pablo Escobar was jailed.
Okay, thank you for that. So those are the 5 songs where we agreed upon, and those in duration are 25 minutes, which means we've got 25 more minutes to play with. Doesn't mean we need to use all of those 25 minutes. So we now have a situation where I only picked one other song, and you had picked another 4. So how about this for fairness? The one that I've picked is long. So why don't I pick that one and you pick 2 of your 4?
Okay, because I don't know what your list is, do I?
You do not. So do you want me to tell you the one that I'm going to put on, which you didn't pick? I'm picking, Paul, Driving the Last Spike, your least favourite song.
Waving goodbye as I left them in tears, remembering all we'd said. I looked to the sky, I offered my prayers, I asked him for guidance and strength. But the simple beliefs of a simple man lay in his hands and on my head.
10 minutes. Yeah.
That's good. So let me give you a couple of facts in relation to it. So Phil Collins wrote this song after receiving a book about Irish navvies who helped build the UK railway network, and apparently they worked under really poor conditions during that time. Yeah, so apparently it was really poor. So I have to say, I think from back in the early 90s when I first heard the album, this kind of went over my head. I thought it was too long and not much to it, but I've been quite surprised. It's really grown on me each time I've heard it in the last month or two. And I think maybe a lot of that has to do with maybe listening to the lyrics a bit more and knowing a bit about the background to obviously what they're trying to say on it. And I think the band perform it really well too. So yeah, I actually really quite like the song now, even though it is 10 minutes long.
I think Irish, which is now called Driving the Last Spike, is very strong. I think it's probably one. For me, I think it's one of Phil's best lyrics he's ever done in Genesis, and I think it's extremely strong.
So, what is that song about, actually?
It's ask him. It's easier. He'll tell you anyway.
I remember this book, which I was sent by Dennis Waterman, actually, because he was going to make a film of it. And he sent me the book because he wanted me to be in it. But the work that these guys did on the railway to make the English railways it's a very touching story because they left their families, and some of them never went home again. Some of them died very young because of the amazing conditions they were living in and working in. And the accidents they had were pretty horrific. And even if they did survive, the strain on their backs and the physical strain of doing the job was just quite incredible. So I've written the words based on that, based on one person's view of it.
So yes, this is my final selection for the album, which is Driving the Last Spike, and that brings our album up to 35 minutes.
So how long was your album? Because if you only had that many songs.
I only picked 6 songs, so my album's 35 minutes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
I was going to go for almost 40, but mine went up to 50.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was quite happy with the 6 I picked there, and it was like, and the thing is, I was looking at it to maybe put on more, and I thought, well, I don't want any of those other songs on, so I'm not just to fill up time. That's defeating the purpose. So if this
that's
was
the whole reason. That's the whole reason we're doing this, though, isn't it?
Correct.
So there's no point in putting stuff on for the sake of it.
Correct. If this was a 6-track album, 35 minutes, actually, I'd obviously ranking it 2.5. The 72-minute version, if there's 35-minute 6-track album, I'm obviously ranking it probably 4 out of 5. Because the stuff that I consider bland, I don't really enjoy is gone. So what do you want to do? You've got 4 tracks you picked that I didn't. Do you want to pick 2 of them?
I think I'll put Since I Lost You. That's my favourite. Do you know the second last one is? suppose it's maybe a bit more like a Phil Collins. It's just quite
Mhm.
catchy. Almost sounds like a 60s love song, so I quite like that one.
Yeah.
And it's not too long. Yeah, more commercial, but just really catchy.
One final selection? Are you happy with that?
I'm going to go with Fading Lights.
The outline still remains far away, fading distant lights, leaving us all behind, lost in a changing world.
On the
Oh,
last 10
God.
minutes.
Okay. And what would you like about Fading Lights?
I was resisting putting it on originally because I thought it's too long, but then I thought a lot of Genesis albums, they had that one song that was longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as good as Domino, but it's one of those songs where it sort of builds up, and it's not too dissimilar to Drowning with a Spike, to be honest, but I just felt this was a bit better, and how it just builds up, and the production's not the best, I would say. It's quite dated now, whereas I think
Mm-hmm.
Domino, although it's very much of its time, I think that's aged better than this. Yeah, Fading Lights.
Fading Lights. Okay, so we now have our 8 tracks on the album, so I just need to
That go up
work
to
out.
50 now, 50 minutes maybe?
Well, I'm going to work out exactly the duration of the album. So while I'm doing that, Paul, why don't you tell our dear listeners what the top 5 selling Genesis solo singles are per artist?
Okay, so at number 5 was Tony Banks with Shortcut to Somewhere in 1986, and he did that with the singer Fish. And at number 4 was Steve Hackett and the band GTR again, from the album we previously mentioned, and the song is called When the Heart Knows the Mind. And the other song we mentioned before as well was Mike and the Mechanics' Living Years, 1989, classic song there. Number 2 is Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer from 1986. People remember that brilliant video. And the number 1 song is an absolute classic, is Against All Odds, Take a Look at Me Now, Phil Collins from 1984.
You're the only one who really knew me at all. So take a look at me now. There's just an empty space. There's nothing left here to remind me. Just the memory of your face. Oh, take a look at me now. There's just an empty space, and you coming back to me is against the odds, and that's what I've got to
Is it
And
really?
it just picked in the air tonight. I think it just picked that sales wise.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. No, I kind of thought it would have been something a bit more
Or You Can't
poppy
Hurry
and
Love.
commercial.
Yeah, that was close. As
Yeah,
well.
right. But you know what?
No, in
like
fact-
Another Paradise or Susudio or something like that.
In fact, you know what was the second one? After that was Groovy Kind of Love. Funnily enough, you wouldn't think that, but
Yeah,
Groovy
that
Kind
was a
of
big
Love.
hit. Number 1.
That,
both
that
sides
was
of Atlantic,
I
I'm sure.
think it sold almost 3 million copies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah.
Okay, so we have, which is quite nice actually, since Invisible Touch was 8 tracks. So we've got our 8-track. We've got our 8-track album here as well, which comes in at 49 minutes. So we're just making it in there, which is great. So there were 4 songs that did not get on them. And those songs are, he says, trying to find the album. So Never a Time. Yeah, so Never a Time. For me, that sounds again like a Phil Collins solo thing, rather than a Genesis track. And for me, it just kind of endears along. I'm not Not really a fan of it. Pretty unremarkable for me. You?
It's okay. It's just a bit like what you're saying. It's just quite easy ozy. There's no real depth to it, really.
Mm-hmm. Inoffensive fluff. Inoffensive fluff. Another one, longer track, Dreaming While You Sleep. Was that one you were considering?
Yeah, I like the bit where it just sounds a bit similar to the other stuff on the album, though. It sort of starts slow and then it goes in, then drums come in. I think it's an okay song. Yeah.
I think this already sounded dated before it was even released. I think the keyboard riff in it, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Green Reminds.
Yeah. Yeah. So that doesn't get on. Living Forever. Yeah, that's the one that had the kind of extended keyboard solo in the second half of the song.
It's okay. It just, I mean, it's upbeat, which is good, but it just, like you're saying, it feels outdated then, and it's almost like we've had that before. It doesn't really bring anything new to the plate.
And done better before as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and the final one that doesn't make it on is Way of the World.
This might actually be the worst song on the album, rather than Drive the Last.
Yeah, for me, it's just total middle of the road blandness, that song, and it goes on for about 7 minutes as well.
It sounds, the production's terrible, and it just sounds dated.
Yeah, not the best. Okay, well, before we confirm our track listing then for the TTMF Supercut of We Can't Dance, let's maybe do joke of the pod.
And for our final rule tonight, it's time for another edition of one of our favorite departments here on Real Time, explaining jokes to idiots.
So, Paul, do you have a Genesis joke for us today? Do you want me to do mine?
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, I'll maybe do mine first then. So where does Phil Collins record his songs? The studio.
Why did Phil Collins only buy portrait pictures?
I don't know.
Because he took everything at face value.
Oh dear. Alrighty. So let's confirm the track listing for the TTMF Supercut of We Can't Dance. So, 8 tracks, 49 minutes, No Son of Mine, Jesus He Knows Me, Hold on My Heart, Tell Me Why, I Can't Dance, Driving the Last Spike, Since I Lost You, and Fading Lights. So based on that, Paul, what would you rate the album now?
Put it up to a 4 from a 3.5.
Well, I'm going from 2.5, and I'll maybe change that to 3.5. 3.5. I think that's probably fair. So, fair to say we both think the Supercut is better than the original.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The band probably think that now as well.
I think they would agree with us, yeah. So if you want to listen to the TTMF Supercut of We Can't Dance on Spotify, you can join our Facebook group where we'll share the link with each of our own playlists. And look out for on likes of Facebook or on TikTok, YouTube and so on. So look out for some exclusive stuff we're going to start doing on there, like album wars, movie wars, great song, bad album. So yes, we just need to get our finger out and do those, Paul, don't we? It's time for the final question. So Paul, for the final question for this episode, let's talk about solo Genesis members. What is the greatest song by a previous member of Genesis that they released solo or with another band? What do you reckon?
Got to be Against All Odds. Phil?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might be with you there. Lots of great songs to choose from.
Oh yeah, lots.
And even just well known like Peter Gabriel with Sledgehammer.
Yeah. Salisbury Hill, yeah.
Salisbury Hill, yep.
And a lot of good making mechanics.
All I Need Is a Miracle. Living Years.
Yeah, is it Running something? That one is.
Yeah, is it Running Stand Still? Yeah, you could go through a whole load of Phil Collins ones. In fact, one of my Phil Collins solo song favourites is the cover "You Can't Hurry Love." I find
Yeah,
I
that's
actually
brilliant.
prefer that to the original.
It was years till I heard the original. For me, growing up, it was always a Phil Collins song.
And actually, one of my favourites of his is a track from his Both Sides album. It was never released as a single. It was "We Fly So Close." Great
Right.
tune. Obviously, I think a lot of the stuff on that album's inspired by Jan Hammer. Remember the guy done most famous for his Miami Vice stuff, instrumental keyboards. So yeah,
Crockett's theme
great
was good
song.
as well.
I Wish It Would Rain Down.
Yeah.
Is great.
Easy Lover.
Yeah, it's loads of Easy Lover. Yep, lots when you get into it. And I have to say, I'm not really familiar with Steve Hackett's stuff or Tony Banks, a solo artist. So yeah, not really part of the
reason why
conversation. So
yeah, the reason why I included them, but I didn't include Ray Wilson, is just because they were in the band longer. You know, like Steve Hackett was there, I think, from the start to 77.
Yeah.
Something like that. So, and Peter Gabriel obviously was there, and so I just felt. No, the thing is, as much as I don't like the last Genesis album, Ray Wilson, he's actually got a really good voice. He does have a good voice and Stiltskin, so I don't blame him. It was just the way it was at that point.
So what makes, we both agree on Against the Law, so I think it's an incredible song, but what makes it an incredible song for you?
What makes that song incredible? Or what makes any song incredible? It's just a great melody, a great love song, but it's also quite emotional, and a lot of Phil Collins' best stuff was about his marriage breakups, and also you get the Phil Collins trademark, you know, the big drum sound comes in. It's just a brilliant song, and although it's from the 80s and stuff, but I think it still stands up well, and obviously you've had quite a few people have covered it as well. Mariah Carey in the early 2000s as well, so even people that didn't like Phil Collins, I think they admit that is a really good song.
I think what sells it is the piano, motive on it is great, and the lyrics, very honest lyrics, but hurts and betrayal, and I think Phil Collins' voice, which for me is still underrated. I think he's a fantastic singer, much like John Lennon. You feel it when he's impassioned about something. You do feel it, just that raw honesty, and that really comes across best in that song.
Yeah, no, it is. It's brilliant. I think for people, what's quite, we were talking about the solo stuff, but a really good album for people to get is what's it called? It was when they did the reunion film, they released an album, so I had all their solo stuff together. It was really good. Oh, what was it called again?
Oh, yeah, I know.
No, it's called Archive. Where did I get spares from?
Alrighty, well, we're in agreement on what the best solo song is. We've agreed on the 8 tracks that make up the TTMF Supercut. So I think it's time for us to call it a day. So thanks to you all for listening, and be sure to come back for another episode of Trimming the Musical Fat. So until next time, keep trimming.
Trimming the Musical Fat podcast is a Stephen and Paul Nicholson production. Contact us via voicemail by going to anchor.fm/TTMF/message, or tweet us at musical trimming, or email us at trimmingthemusicfat@gmail.com. Keep up to date on the show by joining our Facebook group or visiting our website www.trimmingthemusicalfat.com.
I don't need these glasses, it's just that I can't see anything without them.